So what we need is regime change throughout the Middle East. And he actually gave a long list of 7 countries that included Syria, Libya, Iraq, Iran, Somalia, Sudan, and Lebanon. And systematically, the United States has done Netanyahu's bidding for almost 30 years now.
All right, folks, buckle up for this one. We've got Jeffrey Sachs absolutely torching Piers Morgan in a heated debate about Netanyahu and decades of chaos in the Middle East. Sachs comes in with the receipts naming names and breaking down how U.S. foreign policy has been one giant boondoggle for almost 30 years. And Piers, well, he tries to defend the indefensible. Let's dive into this train wreck together.
Going to war with every one of them except for the big one, that Netanyahu so much longs for, which is the war directly between the United States and Iran. But the U.S. went to war with Syria in 2011, secretly, of course. This was what's called Operation Timber Sycamore.
Operation Timber Sycamore. Sounds like something out of a bad Tom Clancy novel, doesn't it? But no, this is the real deal. The US government, in its infinite wisdom, decided to arm and train so-called moderate rebels in Syria. And spoiler alert, those moderate rebels often turned out to be extremists. It's like giving a flamethrower to a pyromaniac and being shocked when things burn down. And the cherry on top, we do all of this covertly, so when it blows up in our faces, we can act surprised. Classic CIA.
It was Obama assigning the CIA to overthrow Assad. Overtly, the United States overthrew Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. It's interesting, Piers, to go back to 2002. This is after 9/11, of course, to watch Netanyahu as being the lead cheerleader for the U.S. to overthrow Saddam Hussein. Now we have a treasure trove of documents coming out that this was really a war on Israel's behalf. Everything about the weapons of mass destruction was phony, known to be phony inside the U.S. government, but this was the argument that was given, and Netanyahu was there in Washington telling him it'll be just great if you take out Saddam Hussein. It's going to topple all the rest of the governments. The idea was, incidentally, that Saddam would be toppled and then the U.S. military would go right into Syria right away. But then an insurgency trapped the United States inside Iraq so that the Syrian war was actually delayed 8 years. But what we're watching is this crazy Netanyahu idea of regional war so that Israel can have its greater Israel, as they call it. In other words, everything is to stop the Palestinian cause, and the U.S. keeps being involved in these wars. And there was Jake Sullivan again today explaining, yeah, terrorists, who cares about terrorists? We're toppling Assad. And this is, again, for the Israel lobby, basically.
But look, you're blaming Israel for all of it, and fine, that's your view. Many people would say, no, it's been...
I'm blaming Netanyahu in particular.
Right, and that's very clear. But America, they would say, look, we've been actively engaged in a lot of regime change and attempted regime change in that region for a specific reason. These countries are being run by malevolent dictators who have a hatred of the United States, and it's in our self-interest. Never mind anybody else's. I mean, could the two things be true at the same time? Yes, it suits Netanyahu and his bigger view of the region. I'm sure that's true. But it could also be absolutely in their belief, in America's interests to do this. I mean, I don't agree with them, but could it be that is a genuine belief on their part?
I agree with you that it's absurd because what has it gotten us? $7 trillion of war spending, massive debts, and chaos throughout the Middle East.
$7 trillion. Let that number sink in. That's enough to send every American kid to college, rebuild our infrastructure, and still have change left over to fix healthcare. Instead, we've spent it on wars that have done nothing but destabilize entire regions and make us less safe. And whose benefit? Defense contractors, lobbyists, and politicians who rake in donations. Meanwhile, the Middle East is left in ruins and we're stuck holding the bag. That is not just a failure, it's a betrayal of every American citizen.
From Libya, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, it's complete bloodbath for more than 25 years now. And so it doesn't accomplish anything. I think it's extremely naive, and I think it's extremely wrong-headed. And I blame Netanyahu for it. He spelled it out. It's his strategy. We've tried it. We've done what he said. We're doing it today again in Syria. It's a disaster. It's time to say, run your own country, we'll run our country. That's my view.
In 2018, we both wrote pieces about the situation in Syria then. I wrote mine for the Daily Mail. This is after a suspected chemical weapons attack in Douma in Syria, left dozens killed, including many young children. I said that the use of chemical weapons by Assad was on Obama's conscience, and it would ultimately embolden only one man, Vladimir Putin. You said on your website at the same time, the US and its allies should face reality and accept the persistence of Assad's regime, despicable as it may be.
Yeah, one thing, by the way, Piers, and honestly, you don't know and I don't know, there's a very significant argument among very knowledgeable people that the chemical weapons was a false flag. And if you know American foreign policy, false flags are the essence of CIA.
But that hasn't been proven, as you know. I mean, that's just a theory.
No, it absolutely not proven. Not proven either way. But I know experts that are real experts who say, well, they say at a minimum it's absolutely not proven, but some of them say this is absolutely all of the signature of a false flag operation. And some say this is why Obama didn't go farther, because it was laid out to him. This was not even Assad doing this. This was the, quote, rebels under CIA authority. And if you study the CIA, as I have for a lifetime, you know that false flags are actually their MO. They
but
always
are you
do
seriously
things
suggesting
with...
that are you seriously suggesting that Barack Obama and his government and the CIA under his tenure launched a chemical weapons attack on Syrian people, killing a lot of civilians? Do you seriously think that's what happened?
Oh, Piers, bless your heart. Do you really think the CIA is above this kind of thing? Let's not forget this is the same organization that ran coups in Iran, Chile, and Guatemala. False flags are practically in their handbook. Pretending this is some wild conspiracy theory is either incredibly naive or willfully ignorant. And if you're wondering why people don't trust the government, this is Exhibit A. The truth isn't just stranger than fiction, it's darker.
Oh, I'm not saying that Obama did it. Most of the time when the CIA does things, the presidents have no idea what the CIA is doing.
But you think the CIA would launch a chemical weapons attack simply to smear Assad?
Of course it would. Are you kidding? It's done much worse than that. It launches coups, assassinations, wars. The whole history of the United States after 1947 is bring down one government after another.
But here's my point. You're always very keen to take a view, even if they're unproven, that is very anti-America. You're never quite so keen to take a view that is anti-dictators. I mean, Assad is a pretty vile dictator. Vladimir Putin is a vile dictator. Do you accept that your views are, I wouldn't say that they are twisted, but perhaps they're slightly jaundiced by the fact that your instinct is always that America's probably to blame unless they can prove otherwise?
No, it's not whether they're dictators or not. It's what the United States' role is. I don't believe that any country can arrogate this task of bringing down other countries' governments. The CIA has been involved in probably 90 or 100 covert regime change operation since it was founded in 1947.
Think about that for a second. 90 to 100 covert regime changes since 1947. That's not foreign policy, that's global wrecking ball. And every time we destabilize another country, we create more enemies, more chaos, and more excuses to go back in. It's like setting a fire and then charging people for the water to put it out. At what point do we admit that this isn't about national security? It's about power and profit, plain and simple.
My whole life has been the United States at war. It's sickening. It's tiring because these wars are disasters. So it's just not our business to say that one's despicable, that one has to go. But literally, by the way, this is what Obama did. It's a shame that he did this. He said, Assad must go.
Yeah.
Well, come on. When he said that, by the way, in 2011 and 2012, and Hillary Clinton said that, I said, oh my God, here we go again. And literally, Piers, it's been 13 years of mass killing since then, no resolution at all, completely predictable. This is what I'm against.
On a point of principle, when Obama said, if Assad uses chemical weapons, we will act, and then didn't act, from a purely political perspective, did that open the door for Putin to then just come in and have significantly higher influence in Syria and the region than he would otherwise have had?
Well, remember, just on this one fact, because it's really important, it is said in our newspapers all the time, Russia intervened in Syria. Russia intervened in Syria. Russia came into Syria in 2015. The United States plan to overthrow Assad dates to 2011. Russia came in 4 years afterward. We should never have done that. This was Netanyahu's provocation. He wanted wars in all those countries that I listed.
Sachs is saying the quiet part out loud here. Netanyahu's strategy isn't about peace. It's about dominance. In the US, we're just the muscle doing his dirty work while he sits back and reaps the rewards. How is it that we're so quick to sacrifice American lives and dollars for someone else's agenda? It's like being a friend who always picks up the tab while the other guy orders lobster. At some point, you have to ask, what's in it for us?
Why are we doing Netanyahu's work when it is a failure anyway? So Russia didn't jump in and we had to react. Russia came in 4 years after we started this. We started this because Syria was on Netanyahu's list. And it was literally a list, by the way. We know from this remarkable story of the former NATO commander, Wesley Clark, the supreme commander of NATO.
Yeah, no.
Wesley Clark went into the Pentagon, after 9/11, and he was given the list of the 7 countries that we were going to take out in 5 years. This was Netanyahu's list.
Yeah, I know Wesley Clark well. I wanted to ask you, the ICC has issued arrest warrants for Netanyahu. Do you support that?
Of course.
But France's top appeals court...
I wish that some American presidents were on that list.
Right, many would agree with you. But I was then going to ask that in June this year, France's top appeals court ruled that there should be an arrest warrant for al-Assad, alleging his alleged conspiracy or complicity in crimes against humanity and war crimes. Would you support that?
I support the ICC and the ICJ, and I believe that we should try to make international law work because we're very close to global self-destruction. So I would like international law to work. Putin is under an ICC warrant. I would like Russia to defend its proposition that Putin's innocent or that Russia's innocent, or Israel to defend the proposition that they're innocent. This is what a legal process should be about. I don't like it when countries say, no, we don't support this or we don't support that. We should try to make these international institutions work, but have full accountability. When
Jeffrey Sachs is an idealist here, but let's be real. International law is only as strong as the countries willing to follow it. And guess what? The big players like the US don't play by those rules. We've vetoed more UN resolutions than I can count, and when the ICC tries to hold people accountable, we threaten to dismantle it. Accountability sounds great in theory, but in practice, it's just another tool for the powerful to wield against the weak. Until everyone plays by the same rules, it's all a farce.
the ICC threatened that it would indict Netanyahu, we had half the Senate up in arms. We're going to sanction these judges. We're going to end the court. We're going to penalize them. No, we should have international law working properly. This would make for a much more peaceful world, actually.
I note you haven't specifically answered.
I don't believe, by the way, Piers, it's not one country doing it. For me, what is important is that this should be international. I'm a believer in the United Nations, maybe one of the few right now. I hope that's not true. I mean, the UN actually has broad public support, but it can't function when great powers are flagrantly ignoring its rule of law. I believe that all the great powers should submit to the UN Charter without their veto power, basically.
There you have it, folks. Sachs came armed with facts, and Piers was left scrambling to defend the indefensible. Whether or not you agree with every word Sachs said, one thing is clear. Our Middle East policy has been a disaster, and it's time to stop being the world's policeman. What do you guys think? Are we finally ready to prioritize America's interests, or are we doomed to repeat the same mistakes? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to give us a like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. We will see you guys in the next one.